Life has a way of testing people in the most unexpected ways. Sometimes, blessings don't come wrapped in gold but hidden beneath dust, decay, and laughter from those who think they've outsmarted you. This is the story of Clara, a young woman who married into one of the wealthiest families in town. But instead of being welcomed, she was despised. Her in-laws mocked her humble roots and wanted her out of the picture. So, when the family estate was divided, Clara was handed the worst of it, a ruined shack at the edge of the property. They smirked, believing she would wither away in shame. But what they didn't know was that the shack carried a secret, one that would rewrite everything they thought they knew about wealth, power, and legacy. Clara had always felt out of place among her in-laws. Born into a modest farming family, she didn't share their appetite for luxury or arrogance. When her husband, Daniel, passed away unexpectedly, the whispers began. She never belonged here. She only married for money. When the time came to divide the estate left behind by Daniel's grandfather, each family member fought for the mansions, lands, and businesses. Clara's turn came last. Her sister-in-law sneered. She can have the shack at the edge of the property. It suits her kind. The lawyer read the papers, confirming it. Clara was left with a dilapidated wooden structure, with cracked windows, a collapsing roof, and weeds taller than its fence. Everyone chuckled behind their wine glasses, but Clara accepted quietly. She took the keys and whispered to herself, "Even the smallest gift can hide a blessing." When Clara first walked into the shack, the air was heavy with dust and neglect. Broken furniture lay scattered. Rats darted across the floor. The ceiling leaked when it rained. Her heart ached, but she refused to cry. She swept the floor, lit a candle, and set up her bedroll. That night, she whispered a prayer. "God, if this is all I have, teach me to make something out of it." As she drifted off to sleep, she remembered Daniel's words years ago. "My grandfather always said, don't ignore the things others throw away. Sometimes they hold the real value." The following week, Clara's in-laws invited her to dinner. When she arrived in her plain dress, they laughed louder than usual. "How's the palace?" her brother-in-law mocked. "Careful not to trip over the rats," another chuckled. Clara smiled faintly and ate in silence. They thought they had crushed her spirit, but inside she carried quiet strength. She returned to the shack that night and studied the wooden beams. Something about the structure felt odd. Unlike the other old farmhouses, the shack seemed intentionally reinforced, almost like someone had wanted it to look useless. One evening, as Clara was scrubbing the floorboards, her brush knocked against something hollow. Curious, she pried the wood loose and discovered a small metal latch. Her hands trembled as she pulled. A hidden compartment revealed itself beneath the floor. Inside was a locked chest, old and covered in dust. She dragged it into the open and stared. Could it be? The chest was heavy, far heavier than she expected. After struggling with the rusted lock, she managed to break it open with a hammer. What she saw inside made her gasp so loudly it echoed in the shack. Bundles of documents, old maps, keys, bank certificates, and tucked at the very bottom, bearer bonds, stock certificates, and deeds worth millions. Clara sat all night, sorting through the documents. One certificate after another revealed ownership stakes in companies she recognized, shipping firms, real estate holdings, even shares in tech giants. Her late husband's grandfather had hidden these assets away. Perhaps he didn't trust his greedy heirs. Perhaps he wanted someone humble, patient, and wise enough to discover them. By sunrise, Clara realized the truth. She wasn't holding scraps. She was holding a fortune. Nearly $300 million in assets and investments that had quietly grown over decades. Clara knew she couldn't tell anyone, not yet. Her in-laws would tear her apart if they knew. So she played her role. She returned to family dinners, smiling politely, letting them mock her shack. But behind the scenes, she hired a lawyer, verified the documents, and began transferring the assets into her name legally. The bonds, the land deeds, the accounts, all were real. She remembered Daniel's voice again. Strength isn't in showing off. It's in patience. Wait until the right moment. With part of her newfound wealth, Clara began repairing the shack. She didn't hire flashy contractors. Instead, she worked with local carpenters and builders, paying them fairly and helping their families. Within months, the shack transformed into a charming countryside villa, warm, welcoming, and far more elegant than her in-laws' coal mansions. Villagers whispered about the change, but Clara stayed humble. She poured much of her money into schools, hospitals, and small businesses in town. Quietly, her influence grew. Her in-laws soon began facing financial troubles. Their businesses, mismanaged and overspent, collapsed one after another. They turned to each other for help, but no one could save them. Finally, one evening, Clara's sister-in-law arrived at the shack, now transformed into a grand home. She hesitated before knocking, her pride broken. Clara opened the door, radiant yet calm. "Welcome. Come in." When her relatives stepped inside and saw the richness she had built, they were speechless. It wasn't until the lawyer gathered the family for a final estate review that the truth came out. The lawyer announced, "Contrary to your belief, the shack wasn't worthless. It contained Mr. Carter's most valuable assets, hidden intentionally, and those assets now legally belong to Clara." The room fell into stunned silence. Some gasped, others lowered their heads in shame. Clara stood, her voice steady. "You gave me a shack because you thought I was nothing. But your grandfather knew better. True wealth doesn't shine on the surface. It's hidden where only patience and faith can find it." Years later, Clara's story became a local legend. The woman once mocked for her poverty now owned an empire worth $300 million. But she never flaunted her wealth. She lived simply, gave generously, and carried herself with dignity. Her in-laws, once cruel and arrogant, now came to her for guidance. Some even apologized. Clara forgave them, but she never forgot the lesson. Life isn't about what others hand you. It's about what you make of it. Backhand index pointing right. They gave her a ruined shack. She turned it into an empire. Backhand index pointing right. They laughed at her. But in the end, she had the last laugh. Moral: true strength lies in humility, vision, and the courage to see treasure where others see trash.